Maupay na adlaw sa inyong tanan. This is Sandra Cabegin, and for today, I am going to briefly give you a comprehensible outline of the distinct purposes behind a research paper's literature review and the definition of terms. But first, of course, we need to be aware of the learning objectives that you are expected to accomplish after taking a trip down memory lane. And as you can see on my screen, there is a total of four objectives. So first, which is the very forefront and the very intention of my part, is you're going to determine the definition of a literature review and the definition of terms in a research paper. And then we're hoping that you're going to value the significance of a literature review and the definition of terms in research. And then you're going to create a semblance of the literature review and definitional terms following the proper guidelines and format that we have presented. And then lastly, you're going to utilize all the information, all the data that you have learned pertaining to literature review and definition of terms during the application at the end of the lesson. And then now that these are settled with, let us now formally begin the discussion. With the definition that I have procured for you on screen or on the PPT slide, we can identify literature review as a methodical and comprehensive analysis of books, scholarly articles, and other academic mga sources that are relevant to a specific topic, which in turn provides the base or foundation of knowledge on a research topic, right? But bear in mind that it can be a specific scholarly paper or a section in a research paper. We can also infer that literature reviews are designed for us to identify and critique the existing literature on a topic to justify our research by exposing several gaps in a current study, thus putting into perspective everything that we have learned from just the first definition alone. It is a critical evaluation of literary works that are related to our research problem that will aid us in demonstrating how our research will fit within a larger or broader field of study. Such is also parallel to our second definition of an LR, or a literature review, wherein it is simply an earnest analysis of the current research on a topic. And that analysis should direct your research objective. One that I would like to pertain or connect with are the identified research gap or answering the identified research gaps. Although this should not be confused with a book review or an annotated bibliography, since both of those are very different in purpose and scope. But I think you'll realize this further on with the discussion and report of my partners. But basically, a literature review can be a standalone element or a part of a larger end product where constant documentation is pivotal or important. Other purposes that are also noteworthy when it comes to discussing a literature review is that it helps us identify areas of previous or prior nga mga scholastic nga mga works to prevent the actual duplication and repetition of the content. And we also give credit, of course, to other researchers as well, which is a must, especially when we involve scholarly articles and research papers that took a lot of time and effort, and to avoid hassles that are accompanied when we commit acts of plagiarism and the like. And then, second, is that it helps us identify what are the inconsistencies, what are the gaps in our research or in their research, and conflicts in previous studies. Second is that it helps us identify the inconsistencies. What are the gaps in research? What conflicts were present in previous studies? And the open questions left from the other research, which will help us identify the need for our additional research. In short, it helps us justify our research, which is kept up to date with the current trends and the findings that we have from the literature review, and to help us develop new questions that we will answer in our research paper. Moving on to the second half of my report are the definition of terms. So, the definition of terms is usually an annex to a work, a book, a research paper, a pamphlet, etc. And this is a significant or a crucial part of a research paper or report in which the key or the important terms in the study are clearly defined. And this section can be found in chapter 1. So the terms that have special meanings in the research are well defined. We also cite authorities that may be necessary and use the usual citation format, which is further explained by one of my partners later on in this report with the guidelines on how to make one. So definition actually applies to functions. As you can see here on the slide, we have conceptual and operational functions. So what is the difference between the two? So conceptual function is the universal meaning that is attributed to a word or a group of words or phrases, and it is understood by many people. It is abstract and most general in nature. So the usual source for conceptual definitions can be derived from the dictionary, which is the reference book of everyday language. Operational function, on the other hand, is the meaning of the concept or term that is utilized in a particular study, meaning unlike the conceptual definition, it is stated in a concrete or measurable term. So basically, operational definition of terms refers to a detailed explanation of the technical terms and measurements that are used during the data collection. This is done to standardize the data, and whenever data is being collected, it is necessary to clearly define how were we able to collect the data. So here's an example to further differentiate the two. So consider a study requiring water temperature that needs to be measured. So, an operational definition would explain how the temperature is measured. Basically, is it the thermometer type? How was the thermometer positioned? How long was it left in the water? And so on. In contrast, a conceptual definition might describe the scientific definition of temperature. Again, it is placed, so the definition of terms is placed on the last part of chapter 1 to tell the meaning of the terms used throughout the said chapter. And the usual practice when using both types of definition that we have discussed is to state first ang conceptual, and then it's followed by the operational function of definition. To recap everything that we have learned, literature review creates a landscape for the reader. It gives us a full understanding of the developments in the field. This landscape informs readers that the author or the researchers has indeed assimilated all or just the vast majority of previous significant works in the field into her or his research, whereas the definition of terms is constructed in chapter 1 to provide an unambiguous meaning to the terms that otherwise can be interpreted in various or in different ways. Thank you so much for listening. That is now the end of my report. So now you're going to move on to the next part of the facilitation, wherein you'll be introduced on how to make a definition of terms or the literature review for research. Thank you. May Govanen and may God bless you.